In 1994, director Frank Darabont directed and adapted Stephen King's epic prison drama, The Shawshank Redemption. The film earned 7 Oscar nominations. He spent the next 5 years searching for the right project to adapt and direct. Ironically, he found it in another prison drama written by Stephen King. The Green Mile stars Tom Hanks and Michael Clark Duncan. Here is a clip.
We got a dead man walking here.
Percy, it's enough.
Tell me everything that you can tell me about that scene.
Well, it took 3 days to shoot.
Why?
Well, not just that, but I mean, there's still quite a bit of dialogue once they get into the cell, it was all predicated on the notion that you don't see the man is so big that you don't actually see him until he first speaks, which was a wonderful idea. I'm not entirely sure I can claim complete credit for it. I seem to recall somebody making some reference to his height in the frame that might have triggered the idea.
Yeah.
But what a pleasure it was to work with those actors. My gosh.
Yeah. But in this scene, what are you're trying to create? One, the size.
Yes.
And
a
the
sense
attitude
of
of
mystery.
Hanks and mystery.
Yeah. Really, just a sense of mystery of who is this guy, not just to us, but certainly to the characters in the scene. And I mean, when you see the look on Hank's face, that wonderful, subtle, like, oh my gosh, look on his face.
Yeah, he's big.
He's just terrific.
Why? How come you? Well, Stephen King. First of all, are you reading about this novella on the internet, Stephen King?
Yeah, I read about that this morning.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
400,000 people tried to download the darn thing.
I mean, it's just, what is it? 65 pages, I think.
Yeah,
and they can't.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, King is
it's stunning. I mean, some people are saying that this may very well, the response here may indicate the change that's coming.
Yes, it may well. Which I'm very happy for Steve's success, but frankly, I still want it bound in.
You want somebody else to do the binding for you.
I want it bound. I want it, printed. I want it on paper. I'm an old-fashioned guy that way. I love books, which is where my love of King comes from. Originally,
you were a King fan for a while.
Since high school. The book club, by mistake, sent me The Shining.
Is that right?
I'd never heard of Stephen King.
Mistake?
By mistake. Well, you have to, you join one of these clubs, you have to send the card back. It
Right.
wasn't their mistake, it was mine.
Yeah.
I forgot to send the card back.
Yeah.
And so I get
So you don't send the card back, they send it to you automatically?
They send it to you automatically. I get the book in the mail, and I thought, I'm in high school. I can't afford this, but it looks kind of interesting. And I opened the book just randomly, and it happened to be the moment when the dead woman was sitting up in the tub to confront the little boy, and I thought, I'm going to have to dig up the dough somewhere because I ain't sending this one back. And I have just been an enormous fan of his work ever since. I've read every word the man's published, and indeed some that he hasn't published. He's a marvelous storyteller, a great storyteller in the best old-fashioned sense of telling stories.
Does he make interesting characters?
Oh yeah, tremendously compelling. I mean, this is really at the heart of both.
Well, you
this
can't tell whether it's a movie or book. I mean, because an actor sometimes can.
Oh well, we're all riding on the coattails of Steve King here, in both The Green Mile and in Shawshank Redemption. It was really the characters were the engine driving the train. Truly, taking you through this emotional journey that he was able to lay down with both of these pieces of work. So, oh yeah, he's ferocious grasp of characters. That's really, I think, at the heart of his success.
Didn't you have a large amount of reticence saying, come on, I love Stephen King and I like this story, but I mean, after all, I just did this.
Yes, I had, well, a moment's hesitation, really, because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna wind up pigeonholing myself.
Right. It's a prison story again.
Yeah. I first heard of The Green Mile when I was talking to Steve on the phone one day, just, hi, how are you? And he said, let me tell you this. I've been toying with this idea. I'm thinking of writing. Let me tell you about it. You're not going to want to do it. It's another prison thing. And I said, you're right, Steve. I'm not going to want to do it, but tell me anyway. Yeah. And he told me this idea, and I was intrigued enough that I said, oh, well, okay, you're right. I'm not going to want to do it, but give me first crack at it if you ever write the thing.
Yeah.
And then when the first book
Did he agree
came,
right there on the spot?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Bless his heart.
Because he likes Shawshank so much?
He loved Shawshank. And this was, again, going to be a very character-driven piece. And when I read that first book, the first of the 6 that were published, I thought, oh, my gosh, I'm going back to prison. I have no choice. I could see where Steve is here.
Yeah.
You know, I know his work so well. I knew he was going someplace very special with this.
It worked on every level for you. I mean, you've got great performances. You've made a lot of money. You've got some nominations.
Yes. It's been a wonderful result.
So it was worth waiting for?
It was, absolutely. It was. I see, directing is really a hard bullet for me. It's a tough.
Why?
This has taken 2 years, over 2 years now, as I sit here.
Yes.
And it's an enormous commitment of time and energy. And you see all these gray hairs?
Yeah,
It's
they used to be.
Every day of directing, it gives me another one. So I don't make the commitment lightly. I really, if I'm going to make a film, I really want it to count for something. At least for me, I really want it to mean something. So just from that standpoint alone, finally I got to do something that really meant something to me, rather than just take a job, take a gig, toss off some kind of picture that really doesn't speak to my heart.
Okay, that's understandable
Yeah.
and admirable. But why does it take so long to find something that satisfies that standard?
Man, good ideas are hard to find.
Are they really?
Yeah, they really are. They really are. I was being offered a lot of stuff after Shawshank.
Yeah.
A lot of scripts came my way, which was really gratifying, because that also, it wasn't the hit that this is, but it certainly got a lot of critical attention and nominations.
Yeah,
etc.
right.
So
People talked about it a lot.
Getting all these scripts and you know, mostly movies I'm not even sure I wanted to see, much less spend a year or two making.
Well, that's a downer right there.
Yeah.
Not only do I want to make this, if somebody else makes it, I'm not seeing it.
But I'm lucky because I have a pre-existing career as a screenwriter.
Yeah.
I think of that as my day job. It's a hell of a good day job.
Yeah.
So for that 5 years, it's not like I was wandering around wondering what to do with my life. I was keeping fairly busy and just waiting for the right thing to walk through the door. To me, directing means you have to fall in love. You don't just marry the first woman who walks through the door. You have to fall in love. You know,
Yeah.
it has to really mean something.
And it's not easy to fall in love because you don't see that many pretty girls.
You don't see that many pretty girls of quality and with character and with depth and with something that touches your heart. You know?
Scratch 7 out of 10 screenwriters and you see somebody wanting to be a director. True or false?
I think probably true. There are, of course, the exceptions. There are the Eric Roths of this world who
Bill Goldman,
who've gone on record saying, "No way, I want that job," because they've been around it and they see it.
Right.
They know what where the gray hairs come from. These fellas have also had a certain amount of good fortune in terms of some of the directors they've worked with, who've handled their material very carefully and done right by the screenwriter's work, which has been terrific. That's been a pretty rare experience for me in my screenwriting career.
rare experiences that directors that what?
That didn't screw it up along the way.
Right.
You know, there are these small examples, really, but they are fairly minor examples.
So most of them were good.
Most of them were
bad.
not. Yeah, most of them were not.
So you turned to directing because you weren't happy with the way your work was being directed?
It wasn't the reason I did. I've always wanted to make movies from childhood. I wanted to be that kind of. I wanted to be Frank Capra. I wanted to be that storyteller, you know. But it certainly, at a certain point in your career, it does spur you on to say, okay, I really have got to make this move now, because something that I poured my heart into as a screenplay just got turned into an absolutely wretched film, or maybe not even absolutely wretched, but not quite up to the potential that it might have had.
I've asked this of lots of people, including recently Roman Polanski in Paris, who ought to know because he's made some great movies and he's made some awful movies. What happens? You know, he said to me, he said, I don't know, he said, sometimes you have to put your hand in and say, what is it we've set out to do? Because we have lost sight of that.
Yeah.
What happens to movies?
Well, from the screenwriter's perspective,
Nobody sets out to make a bad one.
Yeah, nobody does. From my perspective as a screenwriter who has written screenplays and had other directors take them onto the floor, usually where the problems arise is that you literally don't share the same brain. And the movie I had in mind was not the movie that the director had in mind. And as much as you try to honor a singular creative vision, there isn't one. and that tends to create friction, and it tends to tear the material apart. Then that's been mostly my experience. I think that happened with Frankenstein, which I did the screenplay of, and Kenneth Branagh directed. We had different movies in mind, and it turned into something that I thought was really not optimal.
And when did you realize that?
At the premiere.
Is that the first time you'd seen it?
Yes. I was not accorded the courtesy.
Really?
To be involved once I handed the script in, and I was not accorded the courtesy of seeing any cut along the way.
Yeah, see, a lot of screenwriters I know will say to me, look, I don't, I give him the product. It's up to the director to do what he wants to do. He knows what I think. Here's the director, or she knows what I think. Here's the script. Once, novelists will say, look, once the studio wants to do it, if I'm not writing a screenplay, whatever they do with it is none of my business. Screenwriters will say, what the director does, he's the one who takes the script and makes it into a movie.
Right. And if it winds up not being a good movie, then it's, an indication.
It was either a bad screenplay or a good screenplay badly directed.
Yeah, exactly. And if the screenwriter can live with that, then, well, that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
And if the screenwriter can't live with that, the screenwriter should become a director.
Why don't you just direct stuff you write the screenplay for?
Thus far, I have.
I know.
Although on the next one, I've found a project that is not my screenplay. Really? It's a wonderful script that came my way. That's a very Capra-esque, very much in that spirit.
And how open are you going to be to the screenwriter?
Tremendously open. I want him there every step of the way.
Do you really?
Oh yeah.
You want him there for the ride?
Oh yeah, God yes. I mean,
and if an actor says, I don't get this, I don't understand this, I can't say these lines, you want the screenwriter to hear that actor say that?
I want the screenwriter to punch the actor so that no, I'm kidding. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is the process of making a film. Ideally, does pursue a creative vision that's provided by the director, but it is a very collaborative effort as well. You want to have as many colleagues there with you as possible. I want the screenwriter there. I want the actor there. I want the producer there. There are times I turn to the focus puller and say, "Hey, what did you think? I really want to know." It really is a wonderful confluence of energy being put out by a lot of wonderful and talented people.
Take a look at this. This is a clip. I don't want to stay with these clips too long because they're so interesting. This is where John Coffey, who's played by Michael Clark Duncan, asks Paul, who is played by Tom Hanks, if he's going to turn the lights off. Roll tape.
I let Harry take those chains off you. You're gonna be nice.
Tell me about that scene, too.
Oh, gosh. I'm so proud of Michael Clark Duncan. I'm so proud of him. I'm so happy for him. The work he did in this. Every time I see these guys on screen again, and I was there in the editing room with my editor.
You've seen it 100 times.
I've seen this 1,000 times. I know every splice in this movie. Of course, I don't know what we call them nowadays. It's all electronically done now, so I don't know if splice is the right word anymore.
Is,
but every time I see any part of it, I'm just in love with my actors.
How early did you see Tom Hanks as the star of this movie?
Tom started popping into my head while I was adapting the script, which doesn't often happen. With this script particularly was different from others I've done. Like Shawshank, I didn't picture any actors while I was writing it. I thought, okay, let's not contaminate the writing process with trying to picture actors, because then you start writing for an actor, In this one, however, I had half the cast pop into my head. I couldn't keep them out at bay.
But not Duncan.
Not Duncan, because
right.
I didn't know Duncan.
Right.
And not Doug Hutchison, not Sam Rockwell, who were both also extraordinary and brilliant. I'm talking Hanks, David Morse, Bonnie Hunt, Gary Sinise, Graham Greene, James Cromwell, Harry Dean Stanton. This whole cast started to come together in my head, and luckily, it was like winning the lottery. I got all my wishes in this cast. Everybody said yes. I got all my first choices. I don't know that that'll ever happen to me again, so I'm absolutely bound and determined to enjoy it now.
How long is it going to take you to find your next project?
Well, the next one is, luckily, it's not going to take 5 years because I found a wonderful script that I'm 99% certain will be the next one. I'm hoping to shoot it this year. It's called The Bijou. Very much a...
As in Bijou Theater.
As in the theater, exactly. Right. It's to me, it's the pure essence of a Frank Capra movie. It's very Capra-esque. It's a romantic comedy, but it also deals with the blacklist in the 50s, the McCarthy hearings, so it's got that nice sociological edge to it. It's got sort of the serious side to it that the best Frank Capra movies all had. Capra is a spiritual
Capra seems to be like, yeah, I'm sorry to say, it seems to be like he's the god for you.
He is, yeah. If I had to pick one guy who probably had the most influence on my, not just on my work, but just on my life as a filmmaker, I'd have to say Capra.
What was the influence?
I love his love of people. I love his love of our potential. He was a tremendous optimist. You see that in his work. He was not afraid to wear his heart on his sleeve. And those are the kind of movies that I enjoy the most. Those are the movies that we wind up getting slammed by the more cynical critics. The ones who excoriate the more emotional and heartfelt films. See, to me, that's what movies are all about. That's what I love.
Touching the heart.
Touching the heart. Isn't that what we should be doing with our films, with our art? Shouldn't we be stirring the emotions, touching the heart? Isn't that what it's about?
We're talking about that. Roll tape. This is another scene from The Green Mile. 4 Oscar nominations.
Michael is so good as
Michael.
Clark Duncan,
Right.
And Michael Jeter,
Right,
who was
right,
the
right,
Cajun in
right.
the other cell, and God, there I'm so enamored with my cast. They were all so great to work with, and so generous with one another and with me, and so there for the material. But Michael, as nervous as he was the first time I
So what
met
was
him,
John Coffey doing there?
He came so far as an actor. He inhabited that character. John has a little quirky ability to heal.
Yeah.
And this is the very first indication to our lead character, Paul Edgecombe, that is played by Hanks.
Because it cures him of his bladder infection.
It cures him of his bladder infection.
Yeah.
As you can see, Hanks has no idea what's going on at that moment.
Yeah.
But Coffey just is operating
So what
purely
is the-
on instinct,
Yeah.
and he has to cure the guy.
What is this infatuation with the supernatural on the part of your friend King?
You know, to me, it's like being born with a love of chocolate ice cream. It's a flavor you have somewhere in your mind that you. I was the same way. From my earliest recollections, I loved the old Universal monster films. I loved Dracula and Frankenstein. I loved anything dealing with the fantastic. Indeed, that's what led me to King's work in the first place. And I can't explain why, but I always loved, when I was a kid, I always loved monsters. I always loved, spaceships. I always loved that, that little extra element of the fantastic. I always have.
Tell me about Morgan Freeman in The Shawshank Redemption as an actor.
Oh, lovely. Really incredibly professional. He and Tim were both. Very intuitive. Morgan does not need a lot of conversation. He acts from here. It just comes right out. Very little necessary.
Very little directing.
Very little directing involved there. If I want him to turn on a certain line or say it softer, that's all he needs to know. Tim, on balance, he processes from here, and it winds up coming out from here. So with Tim, there's more conceptual conversation. It's funny, actors tend to fall into one or the other category. So as a director, you really need to be able to gauge what the guy across the table from you requires from you as an actor.
So what does Hanks do?
Hanks, he's more on the Morgan side of the camp.
More intuitive, coming from an emotional base.
Very, very intuitive, comes right from here, and really doesn't require much from me at all when we're on the set.
Now, I would assume someone like Hoffman, Pacino, De Niro come from same place that.
I would guess because I haven't worked with them, but I would guess they're probably more the Tim Robbins kind of actor who needs more intellectual fuel.
Need to figure it out before they can
exactly
connect it with their emotions.
Exactly so. And neither way is right or wrong. It's just there are different kinds of actors, and you have to accommodate them.
Yeah, and the director has to figure out who is who and
which is
which.
Yes, because there's nothing worse than trying to have some conceptual conversation with an actor like Morgan Freeman, whose eyes glaze over because all he really needs to know is, okay, on what line do you want me to turn?
Roll tape. Here it is. Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption.
Let me tell you something, my friend. Hope is a dangerous thing. Hope can drive a man insane. It's got no use on the inside. You better get used to that idea. Like Brooks did.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah, I fall in love with them all over again every time I see these guys on screen.
Just in case people don't know your sort of life track, you ended up in a French relocation camp after the Hungarian uprising.
Well, I actually was born in that camp. My parents wound up in the in that it was a refugee camp essentially,
right.
a community in France.
Where did they grow up?
My father's side of the family is from Transylvania, that's sort of the Hungarian region of that. And my mother's side of the family is from southern Hungary, around the lake.
And they
Lake
left?
Balaton. They left. Yeah, they both got over the border in '56 when the Russian tanks rolled in and started blasting the hell out of the place. So.
And then you were born like.
And I was born in '59 in this relocation camp, and then we came over on the boat. I was still a baby, so I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
My earliest memories are in Chicago, this tenement that we lived in on the ugly immigrant side of town. And then eventually came or went west, and wound up really settling in Los Angeles, which is where I've really lived for most of my life. It feels like home to me.
Always wanted to write movies?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think ever since I saw The Wolfman or Frankenstein or on the KTLA movie when I was 5 years old, or Robinson Crusoe on Mars. Yeah. The very first movie I ever saw in a theater. My big brother Andy took me to the World Theater. It used to be on Hollywood Boulevard, and we went in, and it just was in full color. It was on a big screen, and it was sound, and it was fantasy, and it was storytelling, and it was wonderful, and it just blew my mind. And I think even before I understood really what it was that I was watching, that people actually crafted these things. Because when you're that age, it's just magic and it happens. But even before I really grasped what that was, I wanted to do it. I knew it was somehow telling stories.
Is Hanks going to be in Bijou?
No, he's not. He's not, sadly, because, well, the role really is it requires a younger man. Yeah. By virtue of the story. But I say sadly because, boy, would I love to work with him again. What a pleasure he makes the process. And as I said, he is deeply generous with, you don't get a moment's star kind of attitude or behavior. He's so generous with the other actors. He's so there for them. I remember when Michael, there's one of the most emotional, in fact, the key emotional scene of the movie comes late in the film when Paul comes to John Coffey and says, it's closing in on the execution day, and he says, "What do you want me to do?" And Coffey talks about the pain of the world and what he feels in his head every day, like pieces of glass. You know the scene. I remember when we were shooting that. I'm watching. We're on cameras on Michael first to get his coverage first, and he's fantastic. But my attention keeps going to Tom, because Tom is also fantastic. He's off camera, not feeding lines. He's delivering an Academy Award performance for Michael Duncan, because he knew, here's how smart and how generous Tom is, he knew that the whole movie was about this scene, and the whole scene was about this other character. Wasn't about Paul, it was about John Coffey.
So he's taken John Coffey to the best he can be.
Giving him all the fuel he needs as an actor to shine, to be fantastic, even at the risk of maybe burning himself out. Because once we turn around on Tom, is there going to be gas left in the tank? Tom didn't seem to care. He wanted Michael to just blaze. And I will never forget, however long I live, that's really the one memory that I will most keenly remember from the film. And the one thing about Hanks that sort of says it all. He's ready to lay it down for the team 100%. And he has all my respect and affection for that. He's a hell of a guy.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
It's a
Much
great
success.
pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
The film is called The Green Mile. 4 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Script Adaptation,
Best Adapted Screenplay,
Best Supporting Actor,
Michael Clark Duncan, and Best Sound, yeah.
and Best Sound. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. See you next time.